Origins from Sujurex, and this is the origins of American gun culture by the channel Kraut. Yes, another American video. We saw the healthcare one. I guess it's gun culture one. I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any debate on the comments, right? Yeah, the comments going to be just perfect. Maybe bots will get on it. I don't know. Yeah, bots things are getting ridiculous. What the fuck? Sometimes it's like 10, 15 bot comments. Like, come on. When I don't, I have settings basically enabling comments that, YouTube removes any spam type of comments, and its bot are still there apparently. I don't know why. But yeah. American gun culture is an amazing thing. Most countries with gun cultures trace their back to a need for an armed and trained populace in times of war. Okay. But as much as Americans may claim theirs to be the same, that is not technically true. All right, let me think of the knowledge that I have. First of all, did Prussia, countries like that had, right to have a gun with, citizens, since Prussia was mostly a military type of state, right? So I don't know, like how far back it goes, like how many, empires did that, like citizens can have their guns or something. I don't know. In today's culture, only USA is known for that, right? I don't know if other countries have that rule, like you can have gun is your right, but a popular one is USA. All right. First of all, when it comes to USA, this became a thing. First of all, obviously Europeans came to United States, so they can be free, right? More freer than they were in Europe, with the freedom of religion and freedom all around, right? Where they don't get oppressed by any singular power like monarchy or even government of some sort. That's why it was a first republic. That's why states has lots of rights, right? Their own rights. States can do a lot of things on their own. They don't have to ask federal government for that. So that's where it came from. Like we're gonna keep guns, right? So nobody can infringe on our law. Like nobody can be our oppressors, right? We can fight back against some authoritarian government if it becomes one, right? That was the core of it when they were walking around with muskets and shit, right? So that's understandable, especially if you see how Wild West culture became at the time, right? Where sheriffs were elected by towns, they did their own security and things. It's all understandable. But in today's culture, when there is a central government, that is United States of America, when USA, it doesn't matter how much republic you want to call it, doesn't matter how much freedom of the states you want to call it, in the world stage, USA is one singular entity. Everybody knows. Everybody, not just know, everybody depends on, right? The dollar, everybody depends on the dollar. United States, USA armed forces have drones, ICBMs, right? Ridiculous weapons that you can't even comprehend, basically. What the fuck are you gonna go do with your fucking guns, right? You can't even buy military grade weapons. Can you buy Scar H? I don't think you can, right? You can't buy military grade weapons. So the argument that we need the guns, the same reason we did before. So if government goes out of hand, we can create a militia. Yeah, that's not going to work, right? If anybody is competent in basically, in the government, and whoever is handling the military, they can easily fucking put down anything, any reward that comes up in the United States. USA Army is that strong. I mean, they spend more money than next 5 countries combined in defense budget, with a ridiculous amount of weapons, aircrafts. God knows what they are doing in Area 51, what kind of equipment they're brewing up there. So that doesn't work, right? So all the argument, especially when you see all the fucking, all the mass shootings that are happening. It's every month or something. That has become ridiculous in the past 2-3 years. Or maybe it became a more, global news than before. I don't know. But it is, to me, it's being more apparent. Like every month there is a shooting. Recently there was a shooting in elementary school, for fuck's sake. And this, I go back to what I said yesterday in that video. Like, I understand the, not infringing on freedom, but it's like a spectrum. It's like a slider. Like one side is like having no freedom, other side is having total freedom, right? Both are fucked up. You need to find a sweet spot, right? And it's not like you don't have regulation already on your weapons. You do, right? Like I say, you can't buy military weapons, right? There's lots of things you can do. You cannot attach bayonets in front of your weapon, because that's just like you can just walk around without shooting somebody, could stab somebody, right? So there are already, certain rules and regulations, right? And all people are saying like, let's make it harder. So not just anybody, right? Like anybody who has mental issues can buy guns. And people are even like, no, We can't have that. It's infringing on Second Amendment or whatever. That argument feels weird to me. I know there are going to be people in the comments like this and that and will just argue with that. I've talked about gun topics in the past and people in the comments just went crazy, right? You need to understand this. If there is a topic that is complex, it's going to have pros and cons on both sides. So you can make argument about anything, but that doesn't make that the point here is wrong or something. It's not. Sometimes you have to go with the Occam's razor, simplicity. Elementary kids are getting shot at. That's not happening in any other country, not even in India, right? If you compare United States and India, and if you see India as not so being, developed like USA, elementary shootings are not happening in India, but happening in USA. That just should put a picture in front of you, like, what the fuck, right? If that doesn't give you like a boost to really think about, like, holy shit, we need to think about guns, then nothing will. But yeah. All right, again with the rant, this time it was 6 minutes. I'm going to put it in the timeline like this is a rant. Here's the reaction time. All right, let's watch this one.
If you look at all the maps of the Spanish Empire you can find, you will notice that the Spaniards claimed far more land than they actually
You're going that far back?
Claims that were sometimes outright ridiculous, costly, and completely unenforceable. However, in North America, not only did they claim more than they actually had, but being that they were the first to colonize the American continents, one has to wonder why they failed at enforcing all their claims. Claims that stretched from Alabama to Minnesota to Alaska and even to Hawaii, over a total of what are today 27 US states. Guns and...
Alright, I guess it goes back to Columbus, right? First, Columbus's reason to discovery was mostly scientific. He just wanted to discover, he wasn't just a discoverer, he just wanted to discover things, map out stars and some type of GPS system. He just wanted to do that shit, right? He just wanted to create this kind of a map, basically. But he didn't have money, so he got funding from Spanish Crown. Spanish Crown just said, oh, you can do all that shit, we don't care about that. But just wherever you land, put our flag there. So they just claim lands by being first there, like this is our land, plant flag there, without actually being able to defend it, right? Of course, that's going to be ridiculous. Like eventually somebody will come there with armed militia. You don't have armed militia there, your claim is just out now.
Property is the short answer. The Spanish came to the New World to conquer existing societies, build new societies, and mold it all into their global empire. Unlike the Dutch, British, and French, who mainly had financial interests, the Spanish idea of empire had more in common with how the Romans built empires. They wished to export the Spanish way of life, assimilate conquered people into their society, and enforce a Spanish social structure upon their subjects. And part of Spanish colonial life was that the colonials were strictly forbidden from owning firearms. Colonial subjects didn't own firearms or even property, but were mostly day laborers on plantations and mining complexes owned by corporate interests like the Basque Guipuzcoan Trading Company. When Spain came to the New World, it encountered large native kingdoms such as the Aztecs, so Spain brought an army and conquered them. But when the Spaniards encountered nomadic native nations in places like Chile, Texas, Venezuela, and New Mexico, they ran into trouble. You can conquer Tenochtitlan, but how do you conquer a constantly moving group of peoples not dependent on one particular spot of land? The Spaniards encountered the same nomadic warfare that bested the Romans, Russians, and Chinese before them. And since they banned their citizens from owning firearms, the only way a semblance of security could be established was by an expensive military presence. In short, it was only safe to live where the Spanish crown stationed troops. Elsewhere, well, not so much. Caracas was burned down by a native warband when it was ungarrisoned by the Spanish army. The Spaniards fought an almost 300-year-long war with the Apaches, Suma, and Mansu throughout northern Mexico, Texas, Nevada, and New Mexico. And unlike the wars we know from popular culture involving the Americans from much later, the Spaniards lost. Ranches were burnt to the ground, mines destroyed, and entire towns pillaged and burnt. The Spanish army was hopelessly lost in this vast region, perfect for ambushes and hit-and-run attacks. Spanish settlers were barred from owning any firearms or form militias to defend themselves. Whatever expedition pushed further north and to the east didn't fare any better.
Okay, I think that was a bit stupid of them once they realized there is actual resistance where they are. That was really stupid to give their colonizer, all the different colonizers basically to not own a weapon, right? That was a kind of stupid things, right? Because you already have opposition there. You don't have luxury right now to basically, say, since so there is no revolt in the future, we're going to make sure that none of our colonies have weapons. Right now you have bigger issues, right? Think about that later. Right now, bigger issues. So that was a problem there, because you can send your military there in a different continent and try to defend it, but you're not local. Local colonies and subjects there would know more better of where they are, how the local population would react to certain things and create this kind of a tactics rather than your Spanish military would.
Spanish expeditions sent to explore and settle Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi just disappeared, and presumably because they were wiped out by the Cherokee. Then, in the 1600s, the Spaniards started executing Pueblo shamans for sorcery and witchcraft. The Pueblo, who were a settled people, rebelled and kicked the Spaniards out of Santa Fe and the Rio Grande Valley, restricting Spanish activity to southern Texas and California from then on. The Spanish colonial social order didn't allow for a successful settling of this area, as it was unequipped to conquer and assimilate nomadic natives or patrol the vast lands.
Okay. Here comes
The British had a completely different colonial policy. They explicitly encouraged their colonial subjects to own firearms. More than that, they handed out the land they had taken from the natives to settlers. And that land, aka property, is the reason why most of these settlers came in the first place. Europe was a mess of large landowners, serfdom, high grain taxes, and famines. Political rights, if existent at all, were also tied to how much property a person owned. Having a plot of land that was your own was a prospect irresistible to many, and irresistible to the British Crown was what these settlers would do on that property. Buy slaves, grow cash crops, sell them to British trading companies, and thereby increase the wealth of the empire. And the British also allowed the means of defending that property. The settlers would be personally invested in their colonial property and thereby the colonial economy. The British would profit, not have to spend money on an expensive large standing army, could invest in a large
British, just like how most companies work today, capitalism in a way, right? That, okay, I'm not going to invest shit. I'm just going to give you incentive to defend yourself, make your own self money. I'm just going to take, profit from that. British had a smart approach rather than the Spanish. Spanish was just like more like Romans. We are going to take our place, govern them, and we are going to defend it our own. Subjects there can just work the field. That was never going to work. You're in completely foreign land. Probably nobody touched it for centuries or even a millennia. That's where you are, right? So this is the best approach the British did, and that's why we can already see like how they succeeded in the United States. I mean, up to a point before they rebelled.
Navy to bully others, and the armed colonials would take care of the French, natives, and Spaniards because they weren't just protecting the empire, but their own property. The mistake the British made in the end was assuming that this colonial strategy wouldn't backfire.
But we are making profit. But we need all the profit.
The colonial policy of handing out the land and permitting the ownership of guns for settlers is one the British practiced in every colony they settled, which is why all these countries have less constraining laws on private gun ownership to this day, except for those who in modern days introduced gun control laws. The United States, however, is different from the other colonies. Guns and the gun culture that developed became tied to property. The reason one owned a gun was to protect what was yours, or what you had taken from others. It became essential to the promise of the country to those who came to it, but also part of its darkest chapters. As much as you may read or hear of the American gun culture as something tied to a violent history, racism, hunting, frontier life, or other, and as much as you might hear debates by legal scholars and politicians theorize the modern and past meanings of the Second Amendment, the truth of the matter is that this country's gun culture developed out of and goes hand in hand with the promise of owning your own property and being permitted to defend what is yours. And that is a powerful drive that is hard to break. German and French gun culture revolved around having guns to kill each other. Polish gun culture revolves around being prepared for invasion. Same with Swiss gun culture. And as Europe increasingly became a more peaceful place, these gun cultures, and with them the ownership of guns, eroded or were drastically changed and reinvented. The United States have barely enacted any regulations to limit ownership of firearms, even when a sizable amount of the population used said firearms in an armed insurrection to keep slavery legal. If the Americans didn't restrict firearms ownership after they were used in an attempt to keep slavery legal, I doubt they will do so now after massacres and increased gun crime. There is, however, one thing that is steadily undermining the United States gun culture and might eventually be its undoing, something that is largely unnoticed in the modern gun debate. Ownership.
Yeah, I disagree. Right, whether you own slave or don't was also a debate in its own way, right? Especially at the time. So at the time, if somebody said, "Oh, we ban the guns," you could easily see that like infringing on right because I don't meet your views. And today, lots of unstable people are doing, something that makes no sense, just point blank mass shootings. That's different from what the at that time Civil War was. Civil War was seeing two things differently in a different way. It wasn't some unstable guy shooting up a place just because, right? So it's not the same thing.
Of private property is on the decline. And with the American gun culture being so deeply tied to property rights, what is most likely to in the end change the legal landscape on firearms in the United States is the change of American society itself from property owners into indebted, rent-paying day laborers.
Yeah, damn. That's it? Yep. Yeah, there was a Rant video from last week tonight, I guess, recently. I mean, yeah, the whole concept of freedom, United States being free and land owning prospect kind of going away because it's becoming more and more corporation type in a way. Like certain people and certain corporations are owning all the lands and renting it and just raising the rent ridiculously just because they can, like a predatory practice, right? I mean, that's not how United States started. There was a prospect of owning a land, which is going away nowadays, which is kind of fucked up, right? But yeah, is gun culture so completely tied with the land, even the laws? Because I highly doubt it. Second Amendment doesn't say anything with the land, right? It just say you have a right to bear arms. That's it. If you're a US citizen, you have a right to bear arms. I don't think it has anything to do with the land. But yeah, it might have started like that. Right, well, that was the origins of American gun culture by the channel Kraut. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down your views. I'm pretty sure there's going to be many, but comment down, I guess. If I can respond, I will try. I'll try to respond in newer videos if I can. But yeah, I'll see you next time.